Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to talk about the books that I hope to read in July of 2026. And as always, I'm going to start with the books that I did not get to from previous months. And in this case, I have 4 that I am carrying over from June. And let me start with those. So the first book is The Breathing Book by Donna Farhi. This is a book that I have started but have not completed yet. And it is part of my general kind of like yoga and yoga therapy training. And I try to read books on yoga every month. And so this one is taking me longer to get through because it is a physical copy. So I'm continuing to work through that. I also didn't get to a book called The Necessary Goodbye by Peter Banko. And this is a NetGalley book. I think the book may actually be out now, or it's out in July. And this is about subtitled How Great Leaders Fire with Clarity, Confidence, and Compassion. And as I think I mentioned in a previous video, I kind of picked this one out because there's so many layoffs and other things happening right now that I wanted to just read a little bit more about this. I also didn't get to a book called Into the Blue by Emma Brody. And this is a book that I hear everybody talking about. I think it's a romance, and a lot of people say it's a tearjerker as well. And I think there's kind of like a sci-fi component to it, or some kind of like time travel component to it. And so I'm looking forward to diving into that. I felt like trying to like rush that at the end of June was probably not a good idea because I want to focus on the plot and characters and actually enjoy it. So I decided to just bump that into July. And then lastly, I did not get to the second book in the Shield of Sparrow series by Devney Perry called Rights of the Starling. I reread the first book in the series in June, and this was another one too that I didn't want to kind of like try to cram it at the end of the month. So I decided to bump it into July, and I'm actually really looking forward to this. The third and complete book of the trilogy comes out, I believe, in spring of 27. And so I definitely want to finish the second book in the series to kind of prepare for when that comes out. Okay, so then I have a bunch of books that are pre-selected on my list. So I'm going to go over those next. And then I'm also at the end of the video going to choose 5 books using my to be read roulette card game, and then I'll pick some random books from that off of my Kindle backlist, and I'll add those to my list as well. So on my predetermined list for July, I have a book called How to Start, subtitled Discovering Your Life's Work by Jodi Kantor. I will read any book about discovering your life's work. I love these kinds of books. This one is relatively short, and I also loved the cover of it. I kind of like stumbled upon it somewhere and decided that I wanted to add this to my list. So I do have an ebook copy of this, looking forward to reading that. I also added to my list Living Your Yoga by Judith Hanson Lasseter. This is a book that I actually saw somebody recommending on social media, that they were kind of rereading it and they really love this book. And I have a hard copy of this book, and so I wanted to add that to my list also. I also have on my list a book called A CEO for All Seasons by Carolyn Dewar. And this is a book, and actually let me check. I think this might have multiple authors. Yes, Carolyn Dewar, Scott Keller, Vikram Malhotra, and Kurt Stravink. And so I wanted to pick this up because I really do love reading books on leadership. And this one in particular is on cycles of leadership and kind of leading through change, I believe. And so that is something I think that any leader is dealing with right now. There's always change, and change management is also kind of a particular interest of mine. So checked a lot of my boxes, decided to pick that up. I also have that in hard copy also. Then I came across a book that I felt like was perfect for my interests and passions. It's called The Art of Pacing by Elizabeth Swoboda. And this is a book that came out like just within the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to grab a copy through my Everand subscription. And the subtitle is A Guide to Balancing Short-Term Demands with Long-Term Thriving. And as somebody who just loves like project work and work-life balance and thinking about strategy and kind of how to blend all those things, this book just sounded so fascinating. So I'm really excited to pick that one up too. I also decided for my neurodivergence reading this month to actually pick up a couple different books by Temple Grandin. And it is shocking to me that I have not yet read books by this author. This is a very well-known author in the neurodivergence writing community, and particularly around autism. So she has a book called The Autistic Brain, and then another book called Thinking in Pictures. And these are kind of, from what I understand, like memoirs in addition to like a little bit of science writing as well. And this is someone I've been like super aware of, and like a lot of other people have talked about, and I just haven't read her work directly. And so I do own both of these books in hard copy. I am planning to listen to them through my Spotify subscription as well. And they kind of fit within my 15 hours of what I get for my Spotify audiobook limit. And so those I will read through that subscription this month. I also added to my list a book that I was able to get through my local library hold. And this is called More Than Enough by Anna Quindlen. And this is a book about a woman who I believe in midlife kind of goes through DNA testing and learns something about her family history. And that's kind of like a large portion of the plot. And I really enjoy Anna Quindlen's books. There's a couple of them in particular that I've just really, really liked. And so typically when she has a new one come out, I check it out. And I've read several of her things in the past. And so looking forward to picking up her most recent. Also on my list is the 5th and final book in the Lancaster family series by Sarah M. Eden called Charming Artemis. And this is a Regency romance series that is not super spicy. So if you are someone who likes more like clean romances, I could definitely recommend this series. And it's about a group of siblings and people who are kind of interconnected, and they each have their own kind of romance book. So this is a family that you kind of follow throughout the different books in the series. And this is one of the younger sisters in the family, who is kind of like I think that she stands out in the other books because she's kind of loud and a little bit chaotic, and it's going to be interesting to see where she lands in terms of her romance. But I've really enjoyed these so far, and I have this last one on audio, so I'm going to listen to that this month. I also decided to pick up a memoir called If You Lived Here, You'd Be Home by Now. This is by Christopher Ingram. And what I loved about this book was the concept of the author and his family decide to basically move to a very small town that has like good cost of living, but it's like in the middle of nowhere. And so the subtitle of this is Why We Traded the Commuting Life for a Little House on the Prairie. And I really like books about alternative lifestyles and like people trying out different things. And especially if it's a lifestyle that I'm not necessarily going to choose for myself, like I'm always really fascinated by that. And so I'm excited to read his story. Also on my list is a book called Wait With Me by Amy Dawes. This is the first book in the Wait With Me series. And this is a book that somebody recommended on social media. And so it kind of caught my eye. I don't think I've read this author before. And it is about a romance novelist who gets writer's block. And she ends up in like a waiting room of a tire store because she's trying to like find a place to write where she can get into like the flow of writing. And then there's this guy who works there. He's a mechanic, and he kind of notices her. And I think that they end up, having a romance. And I just thought it sounded kind of like a funny little like neat, cute plot point. So decided to pick that one up. Also on my list is the 4th book in the Quiet Love series by L.H. Causeway called Quietly Falling. I believe this is a 4-book series, but there might actually be a 5th one if I'm remembering right. Right now there's 4. And this is a book that also has interconnected characters with various love stories. You might have heard me several months ago talking about the first book in this series, which is about a man who is mute, who works in hotel security, and a woman who is a maid or house cleaner, and they meet on the bus. And I loved that one. That's probably my favorite one. In this book, there is a man who, like, basically this is like a second chance romance. So he has somebody that he knows when he's like a teenager, and they don't end up staying together, and then they kind of come back into each other's lives as adults. And so like I've liked this author quite a bit. The last one, I felt like the male character was like a little gruff, and I wasn't like super, into that, but I'm excited to try this and see what I think. Okay, I also added the last 2 books in the Anna Pigeon series by Nevada Barr. I have read all 17 up until the last 2. There are only 19 books in this series. I say only, there are many books in this series, but I'm on the last 2. 18 is called Destroyer Angel, and 19 is called Boar Island. And the last 2 books in this series were published several years ago, so I do think the series may be done at this point. These are all mystery novels that take place in national parks, and Anna Pigeon is kind of an amateur detective that gets pulled into these different crimes. And I just have really enjoyed this series. Like, the books are a little bit hit or miss depending on, like what's going on in each one plot wise. But I'm excited to finish this series. So I added the last 2 books to my list this month. Also on my list is a book that I've heard a lot of people talking about, and it's rated, relatively highly. It's coming out in this month. It's called An Infinite Love Story by Chanel Cleaton. And this is about an astronaut who is lost in space, and his wife relives their epic love as she attempts to unravel what truly happened to him. It's set against the backdrop of the 1960s space race. And I'm a huge sucker for astronaut narratives. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of all I need to know. Like, I'm willing to pick this up. And I've heard a lot of other people say it's really good. The next book that I have on my list is a book called Long Time Gone by Charlie Donnelly. I've read several books by this author in the past, and they're all very twisty and fun. This particular one is about DNA results that reveal a disturbing connection to the mysterious disappearance of a famous baby nearly 3 decades ago. And a forensic scientist is plunged into a dangerous search for answers. It is called Engrossing and Propulsive. So psyched to pick that up and see what I think there. I also decided to pick up another newer book called The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chigi. And this is a book that is in an alternate world where nobody won World War II. And 3 brothers are the only boys left in an orphanage whose dark secret is the reason for their existence and the key to their survival. And it says, after a very different outcome to World War II than one history recorded, 1979 England is a country ruled by a government whose aims have sinister underpinnings and alliances. And these 13-year-old triplets are in the countryside, and every day they must take medicine to protect themselves from a mysterious illness to which many of their friends have succumbed. And this is kind of a story about these 3 boys. I just thought this sounded interesting. I do like historical retellings that are like alternative histories. So I thought I would pick that up as well. Also a newer book on my list is one called Tropesick by Lauren Oakey. And this is one that I've also heard pretty good things about. It's basically about 2 childhood neighbors who are connected by a shared tragedy, and they unexpectedly reunite to ghostwrite a love story for a reclusive author. And I think this is one of the kind of like romance novels that like plays on the idea of tropes. And so I just thought that would be really fun because I read pretty broadly in the romance genre. So I decided to pick that up as well. And then last couple of books on my list, I have The Burial Hour by Jeffrey Deaver. And this is the 13th book in the Lincoln Rhyme series. This is a series I'm also trying to finish this year. There's like 4 books, I think, left in the currently publishing series. He's still publishing books in this series. And this is a book about like a forensic scientist who helps solve crimes, and he partners with a detective. This series has been made into, I think, more than one film. It's been adapted. And I'm trying to remember the name of one of the films. Let me look it up in the series. It's the name of one of the books in the series. The thing that you might be most familiar with is The Bone Collector. That is one of the books that was made into a film. And this is one of those series that I really like the forensic science component of it. And it kind of involves you in trying to solve the crime throughout the book. And I haven't read a Jeffrey Deaver in a while, so I'm just excited to go back to that. And then the last predetermined book I have on my list is The Calamity Club by Catherine Stockett. This is another very popular book that is out right now. It's a little bit on the long side. It is about 650 pages. And this book is one that is getting like amazing ratings. It takes place in Mississippi in the 1930s. And it says that poor and rich folks alike have fallen on hard times, even as the social order remains. For women on the margins, the options are few and the price of dignity and self-determination is unbearably high. There's an 11-year-old who is one of the unadoptable girls at an orphan asylum, and she fights each day to keep her spirit unbowed. And then Bertie, unmarried and outspoken, has come to Oxford on a mission to ask her social climbing sister to help the struggling family she's left behind. And then there's Charlie, a woman with a past, running low on luck but driven by fire, fury, and grit. And when their fates converge, they come up with an audacious plan to take back control of their lives. So this is very much about kind of like sisterhood and women empowerment. And this is the author that is probably best known for the book The Help, which came out, I think, in 2009 or like somewhere around there. And this is her most recent. So I think a lot of people have high hopes for this in terms of what it is going to look like. And I have seen like really good ratings so far. Okay, so those are all of the books I have on my list. And then let me go ahead and grab my Kindle app here. And I'm gonna get ready to shuffle the remaining cards I have in this Reader Roulette deck. And I've been using this to pull 5 random cards every month, and then use the prompts from the cards to pick the 5 random books from my Kindle backlist. All right, so let me go ahead and shuffle the deck and pull my first card. All right, the first card I'm pulling is Read a Celebrity Memoir. Okay, I do have a memoir category on my Kindle. Let me see if there's any celebrity memoirs that I've collected over time. All right, after looking through my options, I think the book I'm gonna pick is one called The Unexpected Journey. This is by Emma Hemming Willis. She is the wife of Bruce Willis, and this is subtitled Finding Strength, Hope, and Yourself on the Caregiving Path. And this is about her kind of experience becoming a caregiver to Bruce Willis when he developed a form of dementia. So I am going to go ahead and add this to my list for the next month. And then let me shuffle again, see what I come up with here. All right, next card I'm drawing is Read the Shortest Book on Your TBR. All right, I don't know that I have a way to sort by page, but I do have a category on my Kindle that I have labeled 200 pages or less in terms of the books that are on my list. So let me see if there's anything in here that just kind of catches my eye. And it may not be the exact shortest book on my TBR, but it's definitely going to be under 200 pages. Let's see. All right, the book that is calling out to me is one called As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning, a Memoir. And this book is about a man who in the 1930s left his home to walk the 100 miles from Slade to London with a detour of an extra 100 miles to see the sea for the first time. And he was 19 years old and brought with him only what he could carry on his back: a tent, a change of clothes, his violin, a tin of biscuits, and some cheese. And it says, from these unlikely beginnings, he fashioned not just the adventure of a lifetime, but one of the finest travel narratives of the 20th century. So it was written more than 30 years after the events it describes, but it's an elegant and irresistibly charming portrait of life on the road. And that sounds lovely. So I am going to add this to my list. So it is As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning by Lori Lee. Maybe not the very shortest book on my list, but close. All right. Next up, the card I am drawing says, pick your most recent purchase to read. So on my Kindle, when I purchase things, it goes into an uncategorized collection. So let me go into my uncategorized and see what is on here as an option. Okay, so the very recent book that I purchased is called The Pilates Bible. And let's see how long this is. This will be interesting. Okay, so it's 434 pages, and it is by Lynn Robinson. And I thought it looked interesting because I do yoga, and I thought, well, I should also be looking at Pilates. So I will add the Pilates Bible to my list for July. All right, and then I've got 2 more cards to pull here. Next up, it says, choose a fantasy book to read. I definitely have a sci-fi fantasy section of my categories here, so let me pull that up and see if I can find a fantasy book to read. What's tough about fantasy is they're all in series. So let me see if I can find something that's either a standalone. I know what I want to read. Okay, so this has been one that I've had out from my library, and I have not been able to find the time to get to this. It is by Bridget Kemmerer, who is a fantasy writer and also a YA writer, and I've really enjoyed her books. And this particular book is newer. It's called Warrior Princess Assassin, and I believe it is about a king and a princess and an assassin, obviously from the title. And it's the beginning of a thrilling new fantasy trilogy filled with enchantment, adventure, and passionate romance. I don't know much about this book other than I believe these three main characters may all be in a relationship with each other, in like a polyamorous kind of relationship. But I am not sure. I've heard some things about this book and I just haven't been able to get to it. So this, I believe I actually have currently sitting on my library list. Like I have it checked out and I have not been able to listen to it yet. So I'm going to add that to my list for July. All right, let me pick one more card. And the card I am choosing says, choose a mystery to read. So let me go to my mystery category and see what I can come up with here. I'm actually going to look at some of the more recent ones I purchased, see if there's something here that looks interesting. This is probably one of the categories I have the most books in. All right, so the book I think I'm going to pick, I think this is a mystery, but I'm just checking because I know it's also, okay, so this is a horror book as well, but I'm pretty sure it's also a mystery. And I recently saw somebody recommend this and it was like on a stack of books and I liked everything else on the stack that they were recommending and I'd never heard of this. So it's called Come With Me by Ronald Malfi. And this is about, it says Aaron Decker's life changes one December morning when his wife Allison is killed. Haunted by her absence and her ghost, he goes through her belongings where he finds a receipt for a motel room in another part of the country. And piloted by grief and an increasing sense of curiosity, he embarks on a journey to discover what she had been doing in the weeks prior to her death. And he's unprepared to discover the dark secrets that she kept, the death and horror that make up the tapestry of her hidden life. And with each dark secret revealed, he becomes more and more consumed by his obsession to learn the terrifying truth about the woman who has been his wife, even if it puts his own life at risk. All right, I'm going to call that a mystery. A little over 400 pages, and that will round out the 5 extra books that I'm going to add to my reading list for July. A couple books I've really been wanting to read in there, so that'll be really fun. And those are all the books that I hope to read in July of 2026. I hope you'll circle back at the end of the month and see my debrief video, what I was actually able to get read. And until then, happy reading.